Hi y'all, welcome back to the Discontent Millennial. If you're anything like me, your garden is in full swing and you have more squash and more zucchini than you could shake a stick at. Well, today I'm going to be showing you how I prefer to preserve my squash for the winter. There are several methods for preserving, excuse me, can't talk today. There are several methods for preserving squash. You can can it, you can dry it, or you can freeze it. We're going to be talking about the last method today. I prefer to freeze my squash because most of the time when I'm cooking squash, I like to cook it in a skillet with just a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and a whole lot of butter. It lets the squash really sing and brings out the best flavor in my opinion. I also like to put my squash in spaghetti in the place of mushrooms, or I like to cook my squash with other vegetables in a roasting pan. Because the way that I use squash most of the time is by cooking it, I'm not necessarily worried about the slight texture loss that I'm going to get from freezing it. So if you're planning to eat your squash raw, you might want to investigate other preservation methods. This is specifically for cooking squash. You can eat it raw after you have frozen it. It's just going to have a little bit of texture loss because the texture will change slightly. It's not going to be as much as if you had canned it. Due to being a low acid food, squash typically is pressure canned, and in doing so you have to, when you pressure can foods like squash, they tend to lose their texture because they do actually get cooked in the pressure canner. So that's why I prefer to freeze my squash. All right, to get started, you're gonna need some squash, a cutting board, a knife, a baking pan, and your kitchen assistants. I also am going to be using some parchment paper to put between the layers of squash to prevent them from sticking together. So first, you're going to top and tail your squash. And then you can just place these in the compost or the trash can. Then I'm going to cut it into small discs with the wider part of the squash being cut in half so that all of the pieces are about the same size and will cook evenly. Now that you have the squash sliced, you're just going to spread it on a single layer on your cutting pan, baking pan. Now we're just going to do the same thing for the remaining 3 squash. When it comes time to put your second layer of squash on, just cover the top of them with the parchment paper like this so that they don't stick together. All right, and now it's all sliced, so I just took a sheet of parchment paper and covered the top so that they don't dry out. And then I'm going to take this pan and place it in my deep freeze until the squash freezes. So later tonight I will pull this out and package it up to put in the freezer. And now that they're out of the freezer, this is what they look like. I just removed the top cover, and I'm just gonna take all of this squash and I'm gonna put it in a gallon-sized freezer baggie, labeled of course with the variety and today's date. And when I'm ready to use them, I'll just take the amount out of the baggie that I need to use to cook, and leave the rest in there just as if I was using any bag of frozen vegetables from the store. All right, guys, and that's it. Now your squash is ready to keep in the freezer. It stays good, I have found in my personal experience, for about 6 months before it starts getting frostbitten. If you plan to keep your squash for longer than that, I would highly suggest vacuum packing it. My squash usually gets gone through pretty quick because we really like squash in this household. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it down below. And if you are not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on the bell so that you get all of my video updates. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day, y'all.